people united for better schools and was victorious. However, the movement, what the parents so involved was, of course, Dr. Elaine Brody explained what had just taken place. Our superintendent had eliminated the arts out of the schools, taking the sports and the instruments away. Some of the kids, that was an incentive. My son went because he was in a band. My son went because he played football. And when you said no, that would not take place anymore, some of them lost their desire to go. And when mothers and fathers understood that their ability to possibly get a scholarship, parents were in an uproar. That united us. I tell everyone, I'm a dear friend of everyone up on this panel, Carol Graves. I met Carol Graves as an inmate. I was an officer at Essex County Jail in Caldwell. I came in one evening and there was Carol Graves and this group of people just raising all kind of cane. So Carol Graves had organized the inmates now, come in, the inmates all gathered. So what is she doing? Some kind of riot getting ready to go on here? These women need to have a gynecologist. They need doctors. The women, they just went along. That's right, that's right. So some of the officers said, we need to get her out of here. But what she was talking about was better conditions for the inmates. And some of the officers didn't understand if their conditions were better, our working conditions were better. And Carol Graves organized something that remains today. And it was a wonderful thing. And then it enabled officers to see and understand. And as a result of that, I became the first African-American president of a PBA. Thank you.
Time is really moving quickly. I'm going to pose one question, a different question to each person on the panel, and unfortunately that will be the last question for this panel. So I would like to start with Eugene Campbell. What strategies to improve the quality of education and outcome for students did or did not work during your era?
One of the things I think that took place, I thought was a decision was made to have what is called program modifications, and Carol indicated about taking out certain subjects, especially in elementary schools, music, art, even libraries. They went through a whole thing with that. Because they felt, especially in elementary schools, that I was trained as a teacher. Carol, I was trained as elementary school teachers, etc. She went on even with special education. I wish I'd on that route too. However, I can say categorically, when Carol and I were working together on these problems as such, one, we restored art, music, library services in elementary schools. We said it's non-negotiable, and we made sure they were put back in. In Trenton, they made a decision to say that, I grew up in Newark, or most of us grew up in Newark up here, except juniors, I believe, but we had after-school programs. They said that the Board of Education could no longer be responsible for having after-school programs for children and pay for them. So during our administration, Carol and I, we got together, we met with the mayor, etc., and we had a program and changed it to the after-school youth development program. Dr. Werner from St. James Church, who's also a medical doctor, I had him run interference for us. I wasn't sitting by the sideline, to my dear friend. I had Dr. Werner go talk to Cooperman, etc., and say, look, tell them to get off our back. Gibson will pay for the aide to come in, we'll pay for the teacher to come in, and we had a after-school youth development program for our children. Those who do not live in our communities, those who have no understanding about what is taking place, will forever put our children to the sideline. We said we would not accept this any longer, and we installed these particular programs. Also, during that particular time, we had even health centers in our schools. I asked the question, where are they now? What happened to all of that since the state has come into this district?
Go ahead.
The next question will be for Ms. Williams. What role did community organizing and parent engagement play in efforts to improve the schools during your era?
Thank you. That was a time when a voice was given to the voiceless. Parents came up in numbers, and we held parenting classes to explain to them what their rights were. We were not going to allow their rights to be violated, that their children had a right to a quality education. And somehow, coming from different realms of life, well, if they can, they can. If they don't, no, they must. And we really had a philosophy of saying, we're not going to leave any of them behind. We had a kind of attitude of a Harriet Tubman. We'll be dead in our grave before we leave you. We're going on. And the parents came together, but we let all the stakeholders know. If the children don't succeed, we don't succeed. The unions understood it. Everyone understood it. The teachers taught. And what we did was unbind their hands to allow them to teach, to do the job that they had been trained to do. Now they're so inundated with paper and work and finding out they do more work for the state than they can work on the children. And that's a great part of the problem. Let them do what they know how to do. And help parents, because they're young parents. They need these parent centers. They've eliminated a parent liaison and put in all different kind of people to hire their people. They say you really don't need to be a teacher to do this job, but you need to love children. You need to love children. So they transferred people and transplanted them here just for the dollar. We had an auditor general in the public education system 10 years before the state came in and took over. The test scores are lower now than they've ever been.
Yeah.
We pay more money for staff than we ever did. And less children are graduating and being promoted. If that's not a crime, I don't know what is.
Next question is for Mr. Williams. What lessons have you learned about how the larger social political context impacts parents and students and education?
Well, again, first, let me say this. I'm very glad that we are able to come up here and talk about history, because most people don't allow that to happen. Even though it's short and it's brief, you're going to have to find some way to get in touch with us or other people who have gray hair to really get some other questions raised and some questions answered. So I want to thank you all for doing that. Now you can start my time. Social economic conditions. I think we forgot the bridge that brought us over. And the bridge that brought us over were those small, unpredictable street organizations that did some fantastic things like elect Ken Gibson and were part of pubs. I'm coming back to pubs. Many of us wonder why the state was able to come in and take over so easily. Well, it's because the community side of pubs was deemed no longer as important as the folks who were inside decided it was more important to develop skills based on traditional kinds of power. So the people were left out. And so when it came time, when the state took over and folks said, hey, we got to rally, there was nobody to rally. Now I fast forward to today, because the power structure is not stupid. They see what's going on. There was a time when you had a PTA, a strong PTA, or some kind of parent organization at every school in Newark.